Hello everyone, it's Saoirse, and today I want to talk about a new collection from one of my favorite authors. This is Liberation Day by George Saunders, and it's his first collection of stories since 10th of December, which was almost 10 years ago. This was just published in 2022. I love it. So it has, I think it's 9 stories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 short stories. This is a signed edition, which I'm very excited about. I didn't know this was coming out, okay? I had no idea that he was coming out with a new collection of short stories, and I have talked at length about George Saunders, so you might already have heard this, but he is such an inspiration for me to work on my craft of short story writing, and also to expand my horizons to reading more short stories, because previously I had been very focused on just novels, but I discovered him in grad school when we had to read some of his stories, and I realized, wow, there's a whole world of literature out there that I have not been getting into because I didn't think I'd enjoy it. Well, it turns out I was wrong. So I'll show you his little signature. Very thrilling. In this book, we have Liberation Day, which is, I would call, almost a short novella. That's around 60 pages. Then The Mom of Bold Action, Love Letter, A Thing at Work, Sparrow, Ghoul, Mother's Day, Elliot Spencer, and My House. I think my favorites were My House and Ghoul. And I will give you a little description of some of these. I'll tell you, I'm wearing this blazer. It's a vintage blazer because it feels like old, but also weirdly futuristic, and that's kind of the sense that I get from George Saunders' stories. They're very grounded in human nature and the way that humans have interacted forever, but he has these wild, futuristic, kind of sometimes sci-fi ideas for these stories. Not always, but there's always a weird feeling throughout everything he writes. And you know how I love that. I love to feel just unsettled. So let's see if I can give you a little bit about each one. Liberation Day is really disturbing. It's about people who are enslaved in the home of this man who is using them to put on these really elaborate storytelling shows. So these people are like shackled to a wall and they have their memories wiped when they go into this. And what I gather from it is that they've done it voluntarily because they're really hard up for money, and this is an opportunity for them to send money home to their families, but they have to have their memories wiped and not remember their families to be able to do this job. And he's had stories like that in the past. He kind of explores a lot of the same themes in different ways. Like you will know a George Saunders story when you read one. So these people are acting out like Civil War stories, and I won't give away too much. Probably just should leave it there. That might be the most, that one, and there's one more that are the most like sci-fi. The Mom of Bold Action is a story about a mother who's a writer, an unsuccessful writer, and her son gets attacked by an old man, and they have to point out which person in a lineup was the one that attacked the boy, and it just spirals from there. And that one is very realistic. There's nothing sci-fi about it, but he does such a good job of showing us just regular people, really fleshing out regular people, and normal circumstances, everyday life, a lot about work life, and how unfair the world is, especially to the people who have less or just like weren't dealt a good hand in the beginning. Love Letter is a letter from a grandpa to a grandson, and it's very, very apt right now. It's you can read it as he's talking about Trump, and I see it as being like a little bit in the future, and he's telling his grandson, be careful because I know you want to protect your friends and all that, but you have to really be careful because things are getting very serious. And um, yeah, it's a very short one, and probably the most political. A thing at work I really liked, and it's two women are at the center of it, and one is really down on her luck, poor. She has to steal coffee and toilet paper from the office, and the other one is having an affair with like a client, and she rats out this other woman for stealing. And so there's like a lot about the dynamics of work and what's fair and what's not. Sparrow is about a seemingly unattractive woman who seeks a relationship with a pretty average guy, and everybody's kind of like, why should either of them be happy? They're so average and boring. So it's just kind of down to earth and maybe one of the more positive ones, but you can't, it's kind of hard to even go there with any of his stories. Ghoul is wild. He is the master of writing theme park stories. Okay, like really weird theme parks that you would never think of. So in this one, everybody's underground, and the main character works in this hell-themed section of a theme park, and the park itself covers like everything. There's like a Wild West section, an old Victorian section, and hell. And he's basically trying to figure out, why are we doing this? Who is it for? And it raises a lot of questions, and it's really well done. Mother's Day is about two women who see each other across the street during a hailstorm, and the one woman is with her daughter, and she's recollecting how this woman across the street had an affair with her husband years ago, and she's thinking about all the affairs that he had, and we go into both her head and the head of the woman who had the affair. Elliot Spencer is about an old man who has his memory wiped, and he is used by this organization to take part in protests. So I'm not sure what side they're on, or if this is even comparable to our current issues in politics, but he's used by one side to show, like, here, the older generation is really riled up about whatever it is that's going on politically, and so he's brainwashed into taking part in these protests. And then My House is a really short one and just exquisite, about somebody who wants to buy this house that has gone up for sale, a beautiful old house, and feels like it's really going to change his life. And then he has a conversation that he thinks is going pretty well with the owner of the house, and then he never hears back, and the owner refuses to sell to him. And it is just, you have to read that one. If you only have a few minutes, just read that one. Okay, let's pull out some things that I liked from this book. So George Saunders, he often uses the absurd and the grotesque to show us the imperfection of human nature. I think absurd is really the perfect word for everything he writes. This is in the first story, Liberation Day. Company rises to its feet, its wild enthusiasm seeming impatient that its only path into the world is via these limited, applauding middle-aged bodies. So these are the people applauding for the enslaved people who are putting on this show for everyone. So these people are trapped in their middle-aged bodies. We get a lot of descriptions of people's looks, and with the connotation of it being kind of sad. that they look this way, that they don't want to look this way. And so I thought that was a good sentence, that they have all this enthusiasm. The only way they can get it out is through clapping their hands, and their hands are middle-aged and they have no choice in any of this. Let's see, the next one's from The Mom of Bold Action. The car pulled up to their same old house, which now seemed sad. The house of the victims. The past year they'd re-roofed it, put on a new porch. For what? What was the big thing they were striving to be part of? Was it good? Did it make any sense? They'd done all that for what? So their kid could get pushed down by some freak? This was, so far, the biggest thing that had ever happened to them as a family. So he shows us how life can so easily appear pointless despite our constant striving. Usually in his stories, his characters are working so hard for something, and it's, either they're giving up their lives to have a job so that their family can eat, or they're just never really making ends meet, and they're trying to figure out, well, what is the point of this? But they usually maintain this kind of happy-go-lucky attitude that is completely fraying at the edges, and you can see that, and it's just really well crafted in his stories. This is also from The Mom of Bold Action. How many shirts did you have to thoughtfully refold, and how many staples did you have to pick up off the floor so nobody would get a staple in the foot, and how many hours did you have to spend in the store trying to decide which fruit punch had the least high fructose corn syrup, and how many frazzled young moms with babies did you have to let cut in front of you at the post office, and how many rude rejection letters did you have to decline to respond to just as rudely, and how many nice familial meals did you have to put together with a great story idea, while a great story idea sat dying in your mind to offset one case of hobbling a hapless old. The world was harsh, too harsh. Make one mistake, pay for it the rest of your life. She thought of Mary Tillis, who'd rear-ended that minivan and 2 kids had died. Of Mr. Summers, who'd done something weird with the heater and gassed his elderly parents. Of that guy with the eye patch at Boy Scouts who'd sloppily secured a load of firewood and then a chunk flew through this lady's windshield and she'd driven off the bridge into the river and drowned while trapped in her car. What was that guy's sin? The sin that had ruined his life, so that now at Scouts he was nearly always drunk, and during Pinewood Derby he'd gone charging out the exit door when one of the little cars flipped, leaving his kid Maury standing there like, "That's just my dad, sorry, he once killed a lady." I love when he does these run-on paragraphs where it's just upsetting thing after upsetting thing. It shows us how simple it is for us to be perceived as either good or evil based on one tiny mistake. And it doesn't matter if we've done everything good, everything right in our lives, you do one bad thing that's perceived as wrong and you are evil. You either feel that way or other people make you feel that way. This is from Love Letter. When you reach a certain age, you see that time is all we have, by which I mean moments like those springing deer this morning, and watching your mother be born, and sitting at the dining room table here waiting for the phone to ring and announce that a certain baby, you, had been born, or that day when all of us hiked out at Point Lobos, that extremely loud seal, your sister's scarf drifting down to that black briny boulder, the replacement you so generously bought her in Monterey, how pleased you made her with your kindness. Those things were real. That is all one gets. All this other stuff is real only to the extent that it interferes with those moments. I just thought that was a really beautiful passage that shows us moments are more important than grand endeavors, because when you look back at your life, you're going to look at specific little things that happened that added up to the big picture of what your life has been. It's not just, you got that promotion or whatever, you were CEO of something for 20 years. You're going to look at the little tiny things that happened during all of that. And he's really good at making us see how special those things are. Oops. This is from a thing at work. Why were some old people so dumb as to get fired? Yet sweet. Who could get that old and still not know the basic stuff about how to do stuff? That's just how it was. Probably even back in caveman times, there'd been smart cave people and dopey old sweet ones gazing over sad-eyed at the smart ones, as the smart ones chewed on some big old leg of meat while looking back at the dumb ones like, sucks for you. So he's very good at putting us in a character's head and then showing us how others see them. So that was somebody observing this character, Brenda, and then it says Brenda struggled over the little berm at the edge of their parking lot and started off toward the TGIF, then paused to wipe her eyes with one sleeve of that nutty big coat. What? Crying? Standing there crying in front of the TGIF? Oh, honey. For a second she felt protective of Brenda, who was, after all, one of theirs, or had been, until just now. So yeah, throughout that story we're kind of seeing things from Brenda's point of view and her horrible struggle and why she's stealing the toilet paper from her office, and then it just, all of that, a whole life, you know, her kids and everything, it all just gets watered down to the way that I think it's the receptionist or somebody sees her as she leaves. It's very sad. Just love these observations. It all feels so true. Like he captures the true nature of people, but writing it in this absurd way that makes it far more interesting to read. And almost in writing something realistic in a way that feels jarring or not true to life, it almost feels more real that way, because think about, like, if you see a photo of a tree and you've seen the tree in real life, but you take the photo, you look at it later, and that picture might not give you the same feeling as the way that you perceived it in person. But say you put a filter on the picture and add a song behind it, you know, change the lighting a little bit, and then it comes to represent the way that you actually felt in that moment when you saw the tree. It's the weirdest thing, but it feels, with all that, what is the right word? All that stuff that's not accurate on top of it, layered on top of it, it actually makes the thing feel more accurate. Does that make sense? Okay, this is from Ghoul, and the main character is talking about his friendship with this guy Rolf, and Rolf, his job is to be on this wire throwing spears. Now whenever Rolf on wire hovers over our quadrant, he will wave down at me with his non-spear hand, at which I will rise from my squat and throw my arms wide, exposing my chest as if to say, "Spear me then, flying spear launcher, since I am already a squatting ghoul, how much worse can my afterlife even get?" At which Rolf will fake pump his spear at me as if to say, "Ha ha, talk to you next break, pal." I love that. Hey, sweetie. It's this bleak silliness. He's showing us how we laugh at things so that we won't cry. And I adore that. I adore his style. So here's a great passage that shows us his impeccable talent at very fast world building and characterization. "Gosh, I am usually all about team. When my back went out last year, did I discontinue squatting and stand up straight, which would have felt good? No, I squatted on, using a broken-off broom as a brace. Once, filling in as screaming doomed cleric, though I had strep, I screamed for 8 straight hours, even providing all 6 optional dread whoops." And then just this sentence. "I turn on my heel, hit vending up for a pot pie, take it home, eat it in my sleep slot, go nowhere all night." And all these things are capitalized, vending and sleep slot. So he takes his talent of writing about the workplace and just sends it into oblivion with writing about a completely imagined ridiculous workplace that hopefully doesn't exist in real life. This is also from Ghoul. Mr. Regis unplugs the mic from his little amp, picks up the little amp, walks sadly off, if one can be said to walk sadly while carrying a little amp. I just like that sentence because it's absurd. It just, you have this picture of shame and embarrassment, the embarrassment of being human. You're just carrying this tiny little amp, but like something horrible has happened, but you're gonna look silly because you're carrying a little amp. So what chance do any of us have at being taken seriously when being human is just absurd? This is from Mother's Day. What the hell? Fine, forget the babies. She'd keep the hot hands. She was what she was. No one could blame her. As long as she was Alma, she'd be mad. She had a right. Did she want to be mad? No. What she wanted was to be her, younger, her, non-mad, her, not yet mad, pre-Paul, smelling lilacs, swinging that diploma. No, even before that. So young she wanted nothing yet, liked nothing, disliked nothing. No, before that, before she was even Alma, because Alma would always find Paul, love Paul, and Paul would always be Paul. It came to her and then was happening. It would be fixed when she stopped being Alma. He shows us a lot the ways in which we ruin each other, and this was the woman who her husband had had all the affairs. So she's imagining herself, never having lived through that, and how can she possibly not live through that, to go back in time and not even be her, because she always was going to choose this person who was bad for her. This is from my house, and he's thinking about moving into this house that he loves. I thought of my friends moving awed through the wide front hall, craning their necks up that mysterious winding stairwell, and then I'd guide them upstairs to the room where in such and such a year so-and-so had endured a difficult childbirth. I'd do research on the house and compile my findings in a leather-bound book, to be placed in the pentagonal recess in the narrow hall that led to the former servants' quarters. All my life I'd believed I'd someday live in a place like this, had suffered the distance between such places as they existed in my imagination, and the places in which I'd actually lived, before K, with K, after K left. Their low ceilings, ugly heat vents, hollow pine doors. To live here would be, I imagined, a sort of exorcism of all the limitations I'd ever felt. Here one sensed craftsmanship, yes, but also, my God, the past, the living past, the parties held, the food served, the dust motes of 1862, the war goodbyes of 1917, the whispered late-night dramas that had forever altered the lives of the people who'd once moved down these very hallways and now lay buried in the village graveyard I'd visited on the way over, trailing my hands over the mossy stones, reading names aloud, thinking, poor bastards who no longer walk in the sun. I like that passage. It's like this guy is not living for his journey of life. He's living for this destination. He's just suffered through these different places so that he can get to this one, to get to this house, and that's why it is so beyond devastating for him that he can't have the house. And speaking of the house, he's not hearing from the guy who was going to sell it to him. I started driving by now and then just to torture myself. That spring, the roof of the side library collapsed after a tree fell on it. Soon the tree had become part of the house. After a heavy summer rain, the front porch I'd loved so much sank into the earth a foot or so on the south end. 3 of its columns bowed and cracked. Then one gave way, and the 2 halves of it lay in the yard, and the lip of the roof there drooped, and you could see into the rusty, filth-packed gutter. By October, the grand front lawn was overgrown, and wild turkeys were foraging there. You'd see them big and ugly strutting around like dinosaurs. So this decay of the house, this image of the house decaying, is totally mirroring the decay of his own mind and the mind of the person who lives there. And then I'll read the end of this here. If you don't want to hear the end of this story, then don't listen. This passage, it has a lot of themes of mortality, pride, and regrets, and just for me encapsulates kind of everything that George Saunders does best. So he wants to write to the old man that won't sell him the house. I'm truly sorry, it will begin. Sorry for my part in this. What did you deny me really after all? A beautiful year or so in a lovely place. It would have made me happy. But what is it? A year in the grand scheme? Nothing. What are 10 years, 100, 1,000? I am going, friend. I am all but gone. I believe you prideful and wrong, but I have no desire now to cure you. Your wrongness was an idea I had. I am all but gone. My idea of your wrongness will go with me. Your rightness is an idea you are having. It will go with you. For all of that, I hope you live forever, and if the place falls down around you as it seems to be doing, I hope even that brings you joy. It was always falling down around you. Everything has always been falling down around us. Only we were too alive to notice. I feel the truth of this in my body now. I am trying not to be terrified, but I am sometimes, in the night. If you are a praying man, pray for me, friend. Friend who might have been. Friend who should have been. That letter exists in my mind, but I am too tired to write it. Well, that is not true. I am not too tired. I'm just not ready. The surge of pride and life and self is still too strong in me, but I will get there. I will. I will write it yet. Only I must not wait too long. I love that story. How, in just a few pages, he sums up the human experience. And I love this bit about your wrongness was an idea I had. My idea of your wrongness will go with me. Your rightness is an idea you are having. It will go with you. So we are all perceiving our lives and the lives of others completely differently. Is there a real truth? If I think I'm right and you think I'm wrong, you think you're right, I think you're wrong. These are just ideas that we're having, and I don't think there is an objective truth. But our perception is everything, and it's the way that we interact with people, it's the way that we see the world, and how we interact, how we connect with everything around us. It's filtered through our perceptions. That's the only way it can be. So it's just fascinating how he does that in that story, and shows the regret of having lived a life this way, and even at the end knowing that you're probably still going to keep behaving that way. Even though you've learned all these lessons over the years, you're still sort of trapped in this fallible human brain. Fascinating stuff. I'm going to end it there, and I really hope he continues to write. If you haven't read his other collections, please go find them. I have Civil Warland and Bad Decline, and Pastoralia and 10th of December. And then he also wrote Lincoln in the Bardo. I've done videos on all of these things, and Fox 8 as well, which is a short story published on its own. But he's written other things that I haven't read yet. I did pick up a paperback copy of A Swim in a Pond in the Rain, which is him using Russian writers' short stories to sort of teach a masterclass on writing the short story. He actually does teach at, where is it? He teaches in the creative writing program at Syracuse University. Can you imagine being taught by George Saunders, or fill in your favorite writer or a writer that you really admire? And Jamaica Kincaid also teaches. She teaches at Harvard, apparently. I don't think I would be able to focus if these people were my teachers. I would go and get a degree at these schools just so that they could teach me, and I wouldn't care about anything else. Yeah. So anyway, highly recommend, and let me know your thoughts if you have read any of his stories before. I would love to hear what you have to say. It is so hard to describe what he does. He says it all. He says what it is to be human and how bleak and how beautiful that is. So I will see you all next time. Until then, thank you for watching and happy reading.